Yeah, hey Joe, thanks much. This is rolling down in Studio B. I can't hear myself in my headphones, but I hope everyone else can. And Aaron McKeown. Hey Aaron, how's it going?
Hey, Roland. Thanks for saying my name right.
Oh,
I
did I
bet
get
we've
it
been
right?
over this.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Sounds
just
good.
a
Sounds good
shot
when
in
you
the
say
dark.
it.
Yeah, cool. You're here all alone with just your guitar.
I know. I made the drive out from Raleigh this morning. Stayed with a friend of mine last night and came out. A beautiful drive today.
Yeah, nice out, huh? And getting ready for the big show tonight. You're playing at the North Carolina Stage Company up in Asheville and playing solo. And I guess it's the first show on this kind of unusual little tour you're doing.
Yeah, well, it seems that somehow 10 years have passed since the first record that I made, which was called Distillation, which as a station you guys were so supportive of.
Still love that record.
It's amazing to me. And I remember a couple months ago looking at the calendar or I don't know quite what it was, maybe looking at my shelf of records and looking at Distillation, and I realized that it had come out in October of 2000. And I was like, wait a second, that's 10 years ago. What if I do a project around this? So that was when the idea was born, and I'm going to my 14, 15, 16 best cities around the country and going to talk about the record, what's different 10 years on, play some of the songs. And we're going to, tonight I'm doing it solo. The rest of the tour is with a band, but I actually think that's great because it's going to make the Asheville show unique among all of them.
You know, a lot of people say that playing solo is harder in a way because, like, you know, the mistakes are more obvious and this, you miss. So it seems odd that in a way that you put yourself solo to start the show. Is that?
Well, I think what it is, I've always enjoyed playing solo, and I began pretty much as a solo
Right.
artist. Like my sort of origins come from like the kid alone in her bedroom writing songs. So in some ways my music has always in my mind been solo. And then as I've grown over the years and become a better musician and learned about more things, then I began to think more like a band or learn to play more instruments, began to think about more orchestration. But in the beginning, it's always just been me and my instrument, which serves these songs well because these are the first songs that I ever wrote.
I guess you could talk about the record then and now. Is it still a distillation that works for you? What do you
Something that I've found, well, I mean, I don't listen to my records very much. In fact, not at all. So that's been interesting as I'm, preparing to play the record in sequence. There's quite a few songs on here that I don't play and that I haven't played for a long, long time. That's always interesting to me and the artists that I love, watching them over the years and like what things drop off the set list, what things stay. Is there any rhyme or reason to it, or how much thought is it? I'm always curious about that, about the artists that I love. But for me, there's probably half of every record disappears. Within a year, sometimes within a couple months. You sort of play all the songs when the record comes out, but then some things work live and some things don't. So for me, going back to pick up songs that I haven't played in years was interesting because I don't listen to this record. How has it aged? I listen to it and I think like, whoa, I sound really young.
Yeah.
That's what I listen to it and I think. And then I sort of listen to the details and I can still remember like what the backstory was in the studio. Like, oh, we arrived at that sound because this sound didn't work. Or we arrived at this part because we were laughing and somebody did something by accident. That's pretty much the story of how Distillation came to sound the way it came to sound, is because it was full of accidents and mistakes. And I don't know. I think in that way, it's resulted in a record that's probably aged better than other things that were more planned and maybe more tied to some concrete forethought.
Like when you look at photographs or something you wrote a long time ago, and it's sort of weird to look back and see who you were, and I would think with this too, I mean, you were young, relatively young then.
Yeah, I was 22. 22 when it came out, 22 about to be 23, as I am now 32, about to be 33.
Sometimes like you look back and go, oh my God, I cannot believe I wore that shirt or talk that way. Or
I would say, to complete that sentence, I would say, oh my God, I can't believe I was that unhappy. Really.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I think when I look back at that time for me 10 years ago, I think of it as tied to so much of, it was an interesting like point in my life because it was the end of sort of that young insecurity, like where you're all the time thinking about what you're wearing or people are looking at you and, that's sort of like constant self-criticism, that insecurity. And then there's this sort of brashness that was starting to sort of come into the picture as I was starting to have a little bit of success and starting to figure out what I wanted to do. And both of those things are incredibly irritating to me now. And I see both of those things in that record and in myself in a lot of ways. And 10 years later, I feel, well, I certainly like myself these days more than I would never want to be that age again. And I feel more grounded. But I think that is what, I would describe my 20s. Most people might describe their 20s that same way.
I think that's common.
And insecurity, and then they'll probably describe their 30s. I'm at the beginning of my 30s, but I would describe it more, and I think other people might agree. Grounded, perspective, that kind of thing.
Yeah, young artists are angry and older artists have humor. Don't you see that again and again?
No, it's true. Yeah. It's true. And young artists, I think, are prolific in a certain way that older artists aren't. And I remember being 22 and being like, what? Thinking of my friends who were 30 who might not tour as much or might take longer between records. And I'm like, what? I'm never going to be like that. No way. It's going to always be this way. I'm always going to work this hard. I'm always going to write all the time, which was what Distillation was the result of. And then 10 years later, I'm like, I don't know. I just want to hang out with some friends and, want to think about my family and work on my spirituality. And it's sort of, you have a wider frame.
So as you revisit the songs, are you deliberately changing them? You're a different Erin McKeown now, or are you trying to go back to the 22-year-old?
It's a mixture. Some the ones that have stayed in the set list for years, which are songs like off the top of my head, Queen of Quiet, Blackbirds. This song, The Little Cowboy, has stuck around. La Petite Morte has been a set closer from the first time I ever played it 10 years ago till now. That's the O Estelle song for those who don't remember the French name. And so those songs have moved in a lot of ways. And so now when I'm going back to prepare them for this show, I'm having to undo all the things that I've done to them over the years, all the extra sections, all the different changes I've made, different ways I sing it. And I want to do that. I want to kind of bring them back to their first versions. But then there are the songs that I don't play, as I was saying, the things that fell off the list, and I go back and I get a better idea of. Then I really feel the difference. Like, wow, I wouldn't do that now. I'm going to do it because I want to be faithful to recreating this record. Tonight I'm going to play it in this way because I want it to sound like the record. But those are not choices that I would make today.
Well, how many shows are you doing?
14, 15. I'm still trying to. I have made a wish list of places that have meant something to me over the years, where I've got audiences that have been consistent and big, and so I'm trying to get to every place on the wish list, and that's hard because there's a lot of places in between to do it, and like I said, for the most part, I'm trying to bring a big production to it, but I'm hoping I've been like 15 cities. Yeah. Hoping to do that and add a few more if I can.
So it's solo tonight up in Asheville at the North Carolina Stage Company. And then how big is the band? Is it
Well, economy-wise, I'm doing it with a trio, but I play a number of instruments, and the rest of the tour is going to feature Dave Chalfant, who is the man who produced and engineered Distillation, and so that's kind of a coup to get him because he's got a family, he's teaching, he's also running his studio, so he's pretty tied.
He's got a real life. Huh?
Yeah, I was about to say he's got a real life, and so to be able to get him to come out for some of these shows is going to be really special. But don't have no fear; they will be documented in ways that all can enjoy them later.
What's the? I know you have this really tight and unusual relationship with your audience, down to funding records and things like that. But what's been the feedback? How are the
Well, we're just starting, but so far people have been great. They've, there's all these people are saying, please come to my city, and like I said, I would like to, and I'm going to do my best to get to my sort of wish list of places. But no, people are saying, okay, this is the first time I saw you. This is who I came to the show with. This song, oh my gosh. I'm thinking back to myself 10 years ago. That was part of the genesis, too, for the project for me, which is that, I've made 7 records since Distillation, and everyone has a different connection, and I think people are especially fond of the record kind of where they came into the sequence, and artists that I love, I think of the same thing. Like, I love if their 4th record is the record that I heard first, I love that record. For me, a lot of folks came in at Distillation and feel a special connection to that record, that I don't get as much feedback about other records in the same way. More than any of my other records, people come up to me and say, my partner and I met at one of your shows, or at our wedding, we played Love in Two Parts, or, people seem to have a lot of memories connected to the record. And as over the years, as I've noticed that, of course, my ego is like, what do you mean? You don't love Hundreds of Lions the best? Like, that's the newest. But it's also really amazing that this record has found its way into people's lives and stayed.
Yeah. And all your records are so different too. It's one of the things I've liked about you. But whenever we get a new CD from Aaron McKeown, we're like, okay, what's this one going to be?
Right.
It'll be interesting, but what in the heck is it going to be anyhow? So
yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
And I want to mention congratulations on your latest CD. I know it's been out a while, but we certainly enjoyed that too. Hundreds of Lines. And
thanks very much. As a songwriter, sometimes you have the very practical problem of, literally everybody I know has this problem. It's simple. You don't have enough fast songs in your set. Because I think that's the other thing. As you get older, you take more time with things, and your songs slow down in a lot of ways. And you have to I have to very consciously say, like, okay, in terms of like what makes a good album, what makes a good show, the range of tempos ought to be there. So every once in a while I'll bring Love in Two Parts back because it's fast. But it feels really, that's the song that I always, by the time I get to the end of it, like, I'm really right back in the relationship that inspired it.
Yeah. So are you a Walt Whitman fan?
I am a Walt Whitman fan. My favorite thing about Walt Whitman is that sort of electric optimism that's in so much of his poems. I mean, he was an incredibly complex person and had a whole range of emotions and was able to sit with all of them. But what he put down on paper has this literal electricity to it that I really appreciate, and this sort of resolute, like, looking forward.
But so much literature is dark. I mean, it's hard to be positive and not be just kind of cheesy, to look into the void and still.
And it's hard to be positive and be creative. I mean, I think, again, thinking about what makes a good song and the type of songs that you write over the years and how that changes, it's certainly easier to write about heartbreak. It's certainly easier to write about loss.
Has that been true in your career?
It's been true. It's certainly been true in my career. And it's much, much harder to write the song about about the really simple positive thoughts. Like, it's going to be okay. I love you. Like, we're cool, or the day is sunny and life is perfect.
They always said that about Bob Dylan, whenever he was happy, he was going to make a bad record.
And what they say about Bob Dylan seems to be true for the rest of us, fortunately or unfortunately.
So far be it for me to wish you unhappiness.
Well, it is true. Again, you say like, oh, well, what record, what's going to be the latest Aaron McKeown record, what's going to be happening, and you could probably trace the arc of my happiness through the types of records that I've made.
It's incredibly personal, isn't it? I mean, what you put out there.
It is. And I think also thinking about Distillation, all the songs in Distillation are about real live people who were in my life at that time. Over the years since, that got exhausting, that got too personal, so I would write from a different distance. But at that time, I didn't really know any better, really. I didn't really know what would happen when you wrote a song about someone you loved, and then you had to talk about it. Or a bunch of people heard it and had their own feelings. I didn't know what that would feel like as an artist, or how invasive sometimes that feels. Of course, it's invasive of my own doing. But still, and I think the lesson that I learned, for better or for worse, after Distillation was to put a little distance around what I was writing about.
Yeah. So again, Distillation is the record that Aaron released 10 years ago, your first recording. And she's revisiting it on a 15 or so city tour or something like that. It starts tonight in Asheville at the North Carolina Stage Company, solo tonight, and then with the band the rest of the way there. Aaron, it always sounds great.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Really, it is a pleasure to have been getting to come to such great stations like this for 10 years. Good Lord.
Yeah. Hey, so 10 years from now, you need to come again.
That's right. I'll be here.
Cool. It's WNCW again. Thanks to Aaron McKeown. And we get into something now from John Scofield.